evening, I'm Danny McCue of Anton Community Newspapers, and this is Insight Nassau. On tonight's program, we're going to be focusing on one of the jewels of Nassau County, beautiful Belmont Park in Elmont. And joining me here in the studio is Phil Johnson, the celebrated thoroughbred horse trainer and breeder, who will be inducted into his profession's Hall of Fame this coming August 2nd in Sarasota Springs, New York. You're one of those people, Phil, that I hesitate to do a long introduction on because I'm bound to leave out some highlight. I will tell our viewers, however, that you led trainer standings at Belmont 4 times during your career, and at Aqueduct 3 times, and you twice won 3 races in one day at Belmont Park. Phil?
Yes.
Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
Now, I've had the pleasure of interviewing you a few times about horse racing and about Belmont Park. I wonder if you'll kind of tell our viewers how you got into this profession.
Rather unconventionally. When I was about 14 years old, I used to get some sugar, cube sugar, and feed a milk wagon horse on my way to school.
Okay, and this was in Chicago?
Chicago.
Chicago.
And one day the milkman forgot to put the brake on the milk wagon, and the horse followed me almost all the way to school.
Right.
So after that he put the brake on, but then I found out there were horses at riding academies. Later on I found out my father was a horse bettor. He was a musician at the time, and we had racing forums and horse magazines and all the things that you could see these beautiful animals in, and I said, that's what I'd like to do. I thought I might be too heavy to be a jockey, but I did exercise horses, but they were always my own. I never worked for anybody.
Right, so now, was anyone in your family, grandparents, father, anybody ever in the horse trade?
No, no.
So how do you kind of make that first step?
Well, you do it in a dumb way. I worked in a riding academy after school.
Okay.
And I saved maybe $150 in a year and a half, saved. And there was a horse sale at the Union Stockyards in Chicago. And I bought a horse, a thoroughbred horse, that was 3 years old, that had been, well, he had been run, and he couldn't run very fast. And then also there had been a fire in the stockyards, and these horses had gotten out and inhaled smoke before they got out. So I bought them for $75.
Okay.
Brought them back to this riding academy, and they fired me because they didn't want me to own a horse. Found another riding academy where I could keep him and ride him after school. And as long as I cleaned other horses' stalls, I could keep him for nothing. I took him to the races the following year in Ohio because I couldn't get a trainer. I was too young to get a trainer's license.
How old were you at this point?
At this time, I was 17, and they said you had to be 21 to get a trainer's license. And 16 I was, and they said you had to be 21. So I went to Ohio where anybody, Mickey Mouse could have got a trainer's license. And I raced this horse, and I took care of him, and probably made a lot of mistakes. And he'd finished second and third, and the purses were $200, $300, but I kept going. Finally got back to Chicago, and the following year they gave me a trainer's license because I wouldn't go away.
All right.
So that's how I got started.
Now, what were the qualifications? What did you have to do to get a trainer's license?
Well, I had to pass the test in Chicago.
Okay.
But I'd already done enough and read enough and done enough with my horse to pass the test. I passed the test.
Right. Now, you're starting off, you're deciding that you're going to train this horse. Now, did the horse need training that you bought this horse for $75? Did it?
Well, yeah, you have to exercise him, and you have to do all the things that it takes to get him in a race, and you have to take care of his legs. And I was doing the best I could, but I did find that I was one of the young guys on the racetrack, and there wasn't many young fellas trying to train horses, and the old-timers were very good to me. They're very helpful.
And they would
I ask a lot of questions, and I seem to get the right answers.
So what kind of questions would you ask to the old?
Well, the horse would get lame. I'd say, where is he lame? You know, he's nodding his head and holding his leg up, and they would show me, and we'd get a blacksmith and pull the shoe off and find a little sand gravel or something under the shoe, and you just keep picking up things. You just don't make the same mistake twice. That's the idea of the whole thing. Okay.
Now, how long were you a one-horse man? When did you get your second?
Somebody gave me, they must have been a drinker, but they gave me a horse to train.
Okay.
A little black filly called Bo Betty was her name. And she was worse than the horse I had, but she kept finishing second and third. and we got along well. Had spent the summer that way.
Now, do you stay, when you started out as a trainer, was it the kind of thing where you stayed at one track, or did you have to
No, I had
travel
to
and
stay
tour?
I had to stay at that time. When I wanted to stay in Chicago, I couldn't get stalls except at one track. They had 3 big racetracks, and I was able to get stabling at one track. So I stayed there, and when the horse ran, they vanned him over, in a truck to the track that was running.
Okay. Now, when people say someone is a horse trainer, now you talked about exercise and taking care of them.
Laying a schedule out just like you would if you were a track coach. And you had some young people coming in to run track, and it was you find out what their best distance was, what their capabilities were, what condition they were in, and try to sort it out where you brought this animal or you brought this young man up to his peak condition for the event.
Okay. Now you were in Chicago. You were racing horses. What happened? And now I know you came to Belmont Park in the early 60s.
Oh, that was 1961. I was long before that an established trainer in Chicago. So then I had some big owners, and I was very fortunate. Won a lot of races, and kept wanting to get into New York when Aqueduct opened for the first time in 1959. The new Aqueduct,
okay, right.
And it was so crowded I couldn't get in. By 1961, I got in, and that was a big turning point in my career.
Now you said that there weren't many young trainers when you started out.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get the big owners? How did you start?
Well, I was winning. They're attracted to you when you win. And it wasn't a ban on young trainers. The Midwest was a tough circuit. It was a very tough circuit because once you get started, you're racing at Hawthorne, Arlington, Sportsman's Park, Churchill Downs in Kentucky, Lexington in Kentucky, Hot Springs in Arkansas, New Orleans in the wintertime, even before you think of going to Florida.